And then a few years later, of course, Democrats tried to drag Supreme Court Justice, who's become one of the finest justices in our generation, Clarence Thomas, through the mud. 1991, Senate Democrats pulled out his former colleague, Anita Hill, making sexual harassment allegations against him. Sound familiar? This character assassination was so vicious, so horrible, so nasty, Justice Thomas called it a high-tech lynching. Take a look.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Well, the circus, the disgrace is back in Washington, and these tactics don't stop at the Supreme Court nominees. Many also tried to destroy the character. I know I was in Atlanta at the time of the Olympic bombing. Richard Jewell falsely accused as being the lone bomber. He fit the profile because he lived with his mother. He was listening to my radio show at the time and said I was only one that stood up for him and at least gave him the presumption of innocence. It changed my life. They also smeared, falsely accused. Remember the Duke lacrosse team? We didn't rush to judgment on this show. And let's not forget what the left did in Ferguson. Darren Wilson was found innocent in that case. Remember Baltimore, Freddie Gray, all the people saying he'd be convicted. Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman. How many times did the president at the time, Obama, rush to judgment? The Cambridge police acted stupidly. During every big moment, so many in the left, so many in the press rushed to judgment for pure political gain. There's no presumption of innocence ever with these people when it comes to politics. Harry Reid lies about Mitt Romney in 2012, said he hadn't paid taxes in 10 years. And when asked about it later, after the election and Romney lost, he boasts about it. He's proud of his lie. This happens every election season. One of the biggest smear jobs of all comes from Christopher Steele's dirty dossier, a document bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC to lie to you, the American people, to rig an election in this country, and then to destroy a president after with absurd, untrue, salacious claims like this. Trump's, quote, perverted conduct in Moscow included hiring the presidential suite of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel where he knew President and Mrs. Obama had stayed on one of their official trips to Russia, and defiling the bed where they had slept by employing a number of prostitutes to perform golden showers, in other words, urination, a show in front of him. Well, during an interrogatory in Great Britain, Christopher Steele, under the threat of perjury, he said that dossier, oh, that's just raw intelligence. There's only a 50-50 chance. Those lies were spread to you, the American people. Hillary paid for it. Russian lies, of all things. Yet the left pushed these unverified, uncorroborated claims throughout the highest levels of our government, right into the gullible media, their arm that pushes their propaganda. And as you can see, the left's attempt to destroy the lives of people with baseless claims, it is a clear, obvious, and now predictable pattern. These are real people, unfortunately. These are real lives. When you say that someone's a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a gang rapist, real families, Democrats using all of them, pawns in a political game, no due process, no presumption of innocence. How would you feel if it was you, America, tonight? Because this is the modern Democratic Party. They have now defined themselves as a party of slander, smear, character assassination, a party of besmirchment. This is clearly who they are, because I can't find a Democrat now saying they believe in the presumption of innocence. This now defines them. They only want power for themselves. Are they talking about the economy, about security for the American people? This is why every fair-minded American has a right to be skeptical tonight. What you're witnessing is one of the ugliest smear campaigns in history. If America doesn't get this right, there will be no good people in this country that ever want to serve their country. for decades to come. Why would they? They're not doing it for the money. Democrats are now the party of no due process. They're the party of no presumption of innocence. They're not the party that believes in the Constitution. Has one Democrat said presumption of innocence? I haven't heard them. And you want to know why? Because they all seem to believe when politics in play, when power is in play, that's what matters. All of this, I hope you remember in 41 days. Here with reaction, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Joe DeGenova, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, and one of Judge Kavanaugh's former high school girlfriends, Maura Kane, is with us. We're going to start with you, Tammy Bruce in New York.
Yeah. Sean, it's just an astounding monologue you gave, but it's a reminder to everyone what the horrible situation we're in. Now, as you know, for a couple of weeks now, I have been concerned about the attitude that has been perpetrated here about sexual assault victims. I've claimed that we should watch out for women not being believed because of the attitude of what's been happening here and how now these claims are being used as a political football, as a political bomb, if you will. With this new claim, it is so fantastical, literally unbelievable. We are now in a position where everyone is looking at this, questioning the nature of accusations because now they're simply being used for political reasons. It's shameful. It's shocking. And the other argument is, Sean, that people have said, well, you know, the due process and the presumption of innocence is for a courtroom. This is not a courtroom. In fact, and obviously that's not true. That is a standard for all of us throughout our civil and social society, that what we do in law and in the judicial framework must be a reflection of how we treat each other in civil life, in business, legally, and socially. Because if this will seep into, it's already, of course, a factor in colleges, but it will move into businesses, that accusations will be enough. It will move into our social sphere and our relationships in general, in society. This is supposed to be the modeling of how we treat other Americans and our neighbors. The left wants division and is relying so much on hatred that they want it to flow over onto the rest of us. And we have a chance, as you noted in November, to reject it. And right now, Kavanaugh is just a symbol. He is, in my opinion now, with what we've seen, an innocent man, and now he's a symbol of what the left wants to destroy.
Joe, you've been in this town with this stench a long time. Ever seen anything this bad?
No, I haven't. And I think that Senator Feinstein has set in motion one of the great tragedies in American history. She has traduced and besmirched the United States Senate. She has purposely tried to ruin a good man, but more than that, she has tried to ruin his wife and his two daughters. This is a disgraceful performance by the Democratic Party. And let me say this to Mazie Hirono, the Hawaiian senator, Democrat, who told all the men of America to shut up. Tonight, I say to her, shut up, Senator, shut up. I'm sick of you. I'm sick of Dianne Feinstein. I'm sick of Senator Blumenthal and all the Democrats who have one thing in mind. They want power. They thirst for power, and they don't care who they ruin in the process. This is a moment of disgrace for the United States Senate, and if they don't confirm him to the United States Senate, the Republicans will lose the Senate. This is a national disgrace.
I have known you for many, many years. You've never told anybody to shut up in your life. Could you imagine anybody saying to any woman ever, shut up, and what the reaction would have been?
Yes.
And
it's just amazing.
Sarah.
And I'm so sick of the Democrats on this committee, what they are doing, not just to Judge Kavanaugh, to the country.
But it's not, and you're absolutely right, but it's also about women. And Tammy Bruce brought up such an important point. These assassination attempts on Kavanaugh and his family, and leaves the rest of the women that actually have a reason to complain, a reason to go to the law. Now they're going to be treated. How are we going to be treated as women after this happened? And so, Sean, I think, here we have a man whose family has been just besmirched, as you said, in the press. He's just ripped apart. And now I think the only thing for us to do is to sit back, let him speak. Let's hear him out. You are innocent until proven guilty in this country.
Maura, you were the high school girlfriend. This is the time that all these allegations are being made. You stayed in, obviously you've known him all this time. Did you ever hear of any of this? Is this the person you knew in any way?
Never. From the very first accusation, alleged, attack by Dr. Ford, I was surprised, I was skeptical, I didn't believe it. But then the more recent accusations are absolutely preposterous. They're ridiculous. They do not even fit in with anything remotely close to Brett Kavanaugh or our high school life. There's no way.
On so many high school, college, law school, Bush administration, all of these people. Sarah? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say, look, Judge Kavanaugh had 5 to 6 FBI thorough background investigations. Now, this isn't just FBI paper trail, Sean. They actually go to your friends. They interview your neighbors. They go back to people you knew in high school, in college. They interview your employers. They run criminal background checks. None of that came up. None of that in 5 or 6 of those investigations.
Let me go back to Tammy. Tammy, when you look at Professor Ford, and I don't have a problem with her being heard, and the people that she mentioned, they all contradict her story. They don't have, and then if you look at the New Yorker piece, which should never have been printed, even the New York Times said that Ms. Ramirez in that particular case was calling people from Yale. New York Times saying, and they talked to dozens of people and saying, do you remember it? I'm not sure. And then you've got this allegation. So we're going to believe that somebody went to one party, gang rape, drugging women, inebriated, boys lined up to rape a girl one at a time, and that it never came out by anybody ever in 36 years?
Yeah,
We're supposed to believe that tonight.
First of all, no one is. And again, this is what our problem is now, because there are women who have not been heard, who have not had justice, who've not been believed. And this is our struggle as women. Many of whom, if not a majority, have experienced sexual harassment, sexual assault, and we make different choices about how to handle those things. But we've been working for generations to be taken seriously. Senator Feinstein and the Democrats, supposedly the champions for women, with this process have denigrated all of us. Now, look, I think that of all of the accusations, perhaps Professor Ford's was the most plausible. But when her own witnesses said it did not happen or contradicted her, it became a problem. And this is the thing that all 3 accusations have in common. No witnesses, no specifics, no corroboration, or in fact, even a contradiction. And the inability to corroborate, the inability to do so, all 3.
Ms. Swetnick goes to 10 parties, allegedly, while she's in college, to high school parties where women are gang raped. She never reports it to anybody. She says she's gang raped. She never reports it to anybody. No police report. Look, Dr. Ford, in addition, when you read her biography in the Washington Post, it's a Rorschach test. She's a very troubled woman. She's had a very troubled past. This never happened. This is a figment of her imagination.
What will the Republicans do? What are the Republicans going to do? Because
they should all shut up and let the lawyer ask all the questions. All those senators,
which I think
should
is
keep
fair,
their mouths shut and let the prosecutor from Arizona.
The Democrats hate that because then they can't.
I want them all to
Republicans
shut up.
Women.
I don't want to see a single Republican senator ask a question.
Last word.
I absolutely agree. We need to hear them out, and we need to hear Judge Kavanaugh speak. He needs to be able to present his testimony.
Last word, Maura.
The whole thing is outrageous. None of it's true. And Brett's going to be okay.
How long did you date him?
A few months.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome. I'm happy to support.
We have a lot to get to tonight, from the sewer, the swamp. The stench is horrible here, obviously. Kristen Fisher joins us with the very latest on the Kavanaugh hearing tomorrow morning. When we come back, the great one, Mark Levin. We'll hear from him. And Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, as we continue from D.C. Stay with us. All right, joining us now with the very latest on Judge Kavanaugh, the controversy, and, of course, the hearing tomorrow. Fox News Washington correspondent Kristen Fisher. I get to see you in person for once.
I know. Great to see you. Welcome to D.C.
A lot of news.
Yeah, and, there have been a lot of big hearings over the last 2 years, but this one may be the biggest. You've got a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court hanging in the balance, and at least 2 new accusers coming out today, though one is totally anonymous. Now, Judge Kavanaugh, he's denying all of them. He calls the accusations from Julie Swetnick, who, by the way, shares the same attorney as Stormy Daniels, quote, ridiculous and from the Twilight Zone. I don't know who this is, and this never happened. Now, Swetnick claims that she was drugged and gang raped at a party that Kavanaugh was at 36 years ago. But the focus tomorrow will be entirely on the first accuser, Christine Blasey Ford. President Trump, he's continuing to defend his nominee, calling it all a con job by Democrats. But he also promised to keep an open mind and really listen to what she has to say.
You know, believe it or not, I'm going to see what's said. So it's possible that they will be convincing. I can always be convinced. I have to hear it.
Now, in addition to their testimony, there's also 2 key pieces of evidence to watch for tomorrow. The results of Ford's polygraph test, which her attorneys claim proves that she's telling the truth. And then there's Kavanaugh's handwritten calendar from when he was 17 years old. It places him at places like the beach and baseball games, but his attorneys say not at a party like the one that Ford describes. And, you know, that's the problem when you're dealing with claims from 36 years ago. There's just not a lot of hard evidence to back either of them up.
Yeah, well, this is obviously problematic in every case. Kristen Fisher, good to see you in Washington. Thank you for joining us now with Reaction. He is the host of CRTV's Levin TV, the host of Life, Liberty, Levin, right here on the Fox News Channel. By the way, the #1 show on Sunday night by far. We call him the Great One, Mark Levin. Mark, I'm just going to throw it right to you. We've seen a lot over the years. I've been doing radio 30 years. I've been at the Fox News Channel since October 1996. It's never been this awful, and it's been bad a lot of times.
A couple things here. First of all, notice there's no blue dress here. Out of these 3 accusers, there's not a single eyewitness. There's not a single corroborating witness. There's not a single shred of evidence. So that's what they have in common. No case, which is exactly why the Democrats believe that only the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Bill of Rights don't apply. Only the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Constitution doesn't apply. No due process, no presumption of innocence, because they have to make that case. Because you want to know why? I believe Brett Kavanaugh. I believe Brett Kavanaugh. The Democrats, their lawyers, their operatives, the Senate, their staffers, all scheming around in the shadows. They've come up with literally nothing tangible or concrete. The reason why they blow this off, that it's not a court of law, is because that's how totalitarians think. And so you have people who make accusations. This isn't about women's rights. It's not even about women. There are millions and millions of women out there, many of them watching your show. My wife, my mother, my daughter, my stepdaughter, my mother-in-law and so forth, who don't believe any of this. There's tens of millions of women who find this entire spectacle. It's not a hearing. It's a spectacle. It's a Roman Colosseum. They're throwing them to the lions. They find this disgusting. Liberals don't speak for women. Did Ted Kennedy speak for Mary Jo Kopechne? Did Bill Clinton speak for all the women that he sexually assaulted? I don't think so. Now, people keep saying Brett Kavanaugh had 6 FBI background investigations. How many background investigations did Ms. Ford have? 0. How about the other accusers? How many FBI background investigations did they have? 0. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting to me, all these left-wing Democrat lawyers who represent these accusers, they know where the Montgomery County Police Department is. They haven't walked a single one of their clients into that law enforcement office to file a complaint against Mr. Kavanaugh. They keep talking about the FBI. The jurisdiction is Montgomery County, Maryland, boys, and you know where it is. Why don't you go ahead and file your complaints there? And I'll tell you why. Because then the rule of law actually kicks in. And they don't want the rule of law to apply. And I'm starting to wonder about the Senate Judiciary Committee, Sean. They're either filled with perverts or totalitarians. It's one or the other. They are gleeful, they're exciting, they're salivated all over this. It is a disgusting spectacle. Now, a couple of other things I want to mention, which is this. Look at this latest example. This lady comes forward. Her ex-boyfriend comes forward, and Politico reports he doesn't believe a word that she says. Hannity. Hannity back. The slip-and-fall porn lawyer. The Democrats embrace him. They embrace the argument. Ms. Ramirez didn't want to come forward. The Democrat staff go find her, try and drag her forward. No corroborating witnesses. Her memory suddenly is HD color clear, but she's not going to testify. Then we have Dr. Ford. I've never understood this Dr. Ford issue. She wanted to remain private, so where does she go? To the Washington Post. Now, here's the thing. I keep hearing all over television, of course, I want to hear what Dr. Ford has to say. Of course, she has a right to say. Well, of course. We all want to hear what Dr. Ford has to say. But Dr. Ford is an adult. She's a professor. She has a PhD. She's made an allegation against another human being. She needs to be cross-examined aggressively. She's not the bubble lady. She needs to be questioned. When somebody accuses somebody of a horrific crime, 36 years after the fact, said nothing to anybody else that we know of, at least there's no witness of any kind. The Ford people she mentioned say, no, that's not true. Ms. Ford needs to be questioned and thoroughly. And I want the American people to understand something. This entire process, from Bork to Clarence Thomas and all the rest up to now, has been hijacked by the radical left. Look at the Democrats on this committee. It's the most radical bunch imaginable. You've got Gillibrand, you've got Feinstein, Durbin, Kamala Harris, Booker, all from dark blue states, one-party states who are trying to appeal to the most radical crazies in their party. We need to stand up to this.
All right, Mark Levin, thank you. And could you imagine that 10 parties, boys lining up, drugging women, nobody ever said anything, and it happened more weekends? Unbelievable. We're going to have more on this when we continue. A lot of breaking news tonight. Mark Show, Life, Liberty, Levin, Sunday night, 10 p.m. right here on the Fox News Channel. When we come back, Ed Henry, Congressman Jim Jordan, Congressman Mark Meadows on the latest on all of this and much more. Also, Russia's take on the events of today. Straight ahead. All right, as we continue from Washington tonight with our reporting, Ed Henry has been poring over these newly released Kavanaugh transcripts. Ed, you found some things.
Sean,
great reporting. What do you got?
Pretty fascinating. Some news outlets running falsely tonight with the reports of a fifth accuser against Brett Kavanaugh involving an alleged sexual assault on a boat in Rhode Island in 1985. We've checked it out. It's bogus. It started with Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. He's vehemently opposed to Kavanaugh. He got a phone call from a Rhode Island constituent who claimed early on a Sunday in August '85 a close friend was sexually assaulted on a boat in Newport by two drunk men named Brett and Mark. That's all he had, first names. The man claimed one of the men was Kavanaugh. The man said he called the senator's office after recognizing Kavanaugh's yearbook photo in news reports. Senate Judiciary investigators asked Kavanaugh earlier this week in a private interview. We got that transcript, as you said, just moments ago. Kavanaugh declared he has never even been on a boat in Newport, saying, quote, "This is just completely made up, or at least not me. I don't know what they're referring to." Well, we checked it out, found out the man who called the senator's office has a Twitter account. An hour ago, he tweeted, quote, "Recanted because I have made a mistake and apologized." In earlier tweets, this same man called for a military coup against President Trump and accused the president, yes, of manslaughter. Sean, it gives you an idea of the onslaught Brett Kavanaugh is facing, the idea of ridiculous allegations that are flying around. Some people are running with them.
Like the fourth allegation, NBC News, they wouldn't make it against Matt Lauer or Tom Brokaw or Andy Lack. But it's okay if it's against the president or Judge Kavanaugh. Joining us now, by the way, we have another story rocking Washington in the bombshell New York Times piece reporting Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein proposed wearing the secret wire to record the president. Lawmakers are now demanding he come testify. With us, we have Freedom Caucus Chairman, Congressman Mark Meadows of North Carolina, and Congressman from Ohio, Jim Jordan. Good to see you both. Before we get to that news, quickly, want to get your comments, obviously, on, I mean, I don't even know where to begin with what is now unfolding with Judge Kavanaugh.
You know, Sean, I met Judge Kavanaugh at a young lady who interned for us and, more importantly, clerked for Judge Kavanaugh. She's the daughter of Polly and I, some of our best friends from college. And Judge Kavanaugh flew to Morgan's wedding in Madison, Wisconsin. That's the kind of guy he is. He's a good man. He should be on the court. We know he is eminently qualified. We know he's the right guy for the job. and I hope it happens sooner rather than later.
What happens in the Senate? You know these guys maybe too well.
Well, I think at the end of the day, they'll hear both sides. They'll judge it on the merits of that. But I think the tactics that we're talking about is really distasteful to both sides.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we really look at this, I got a readout that actually was coming from some of the activists, and they were telling them how to act, what to wear, how they were coming in, and quite frankly, coaching them on what to say. These are people that literally do not have a stake in this. They are organized by certain groups to come out and create chaos. What we need are real hearings and let Judge Kavanaugh set up for the vote.
Let me ask you both about Rod Rosenstein. The president commented about that today.
Sure.
Said he's been speaking with Rod.
Yeah.
You both know him.
Yeah.
He says he didn't do it. McCabe is one of the ones. Obviously, it was his notes that were leaked, and he's known to lie. What do you think?
Well, I think the president's statement is consistent with where he's been. He says obviously he's never wanted to fire Rod Rosenstein. He's told
I think
me
it's
that.
a trap myself.
Well, you know, whether it's a trap or not, I think here's the interesting thing is this president is all about transparency. And here we are today, Rod saying he didn't say it. I think he needs to come in before Congress, raise his right hand, and swear, because I can tell you, there are a number of things that Jim and I both know about that Rod did say that really needs some accountability.
He needs to be in front of Congress answering questions. Do we really want in this country the guy who is in effect running the Justice Department, talking about recording the commander-in-chief's conversations? Even if it's done in jest, it shouldn't be done in jest. It shouldn't be done at all. And by the way, this is the same guy who wrote the memo for firing Comey. This is the same guy who hired Bob Mueller. This is the same guy who signed the third FISA. And this is the same guy who I believe, according to press reports from Fox News, threatened a House Intelligence Committee member because they were trying to get information that I think we're entitled to. So he had better come in front of Congress and answer our questions.
What about the president declassify unredacted materials?
That happened as well.
We've been on this. And listen, here's the interesting thing is, you know, Jim and I have been talking about Rod Rosenstein, DOJ, FBI for months and months and months. The only way for the American people to judge is to declassify these documents and get them out. Let's do the 302 or interviews, because you know what? It will be very illuminating, and we'll know very quickly.
Release it all? Is there any chance, because the president mentioned 2 foreign countries, is there any chance that our intelligence community farmed out violating the Fourth Amendment to our Constitution? Why are you laughing, Mr. Jordan?
No, all I'm saying is
that's a laugh that says you're not dumb, Hannity.
No, you're not. You're over the target. Let's put it that way.
Lots of information we need to see as soon as possible.
Thank you both for what you're doing.
No, thank you, Sean.
Thank you. All right, when we come back, Rush Limbaugh weighs in on the Kavanaugh latest allegations. As we continue, you can smell the stench right here in the studio. We're in the nation's capital, D.C. So earlier today, interestingly, Rush Limbaugh reassessed one of his predictions that we happened to air Monday on this program, and he said that if Republicans do not confirm Kavanaugh, they could, quote, kiss the midterms goodbye in the wake of, well, the latest accuser. Rush said this today.
I think the outrage originally was going to be at Republicans for caving to all this, but now we're past that. Because one of the things I believe is truly happening, I think fence sitters and casual news consumers, people that are not ideologically involved like you and I are, people who are not so-called news junkies, I think they're watching this and I think they're just getting livid because this is so far outside the bounds of what even our degraded politics has come to be in terms of normal. This is so even beyond that.
In 41 days, Russia's right. You have all the power. This is insanity. All right, we'll always be fair and balanced. Let not your heart be troubled. Laura's in the next studio. We'll be back in D.C. tomorrow. How are you?
Hey, Hannity, I thought you were up in the rain. I thought you can weather any storm. You're supposed to be up there, and now you're in the cozy studio right next to me. I should have thrown something through the door.
Why are you being so mean? I just said, Laura's next. Let not your heart be troubled. She has all the latest breaking news. Don't miss Laura's show. And then you trash me every night. What's up with that?
It's just sisterly, brotherly love. That's all. Sean, you had a great show tonight.
All right, have a great show.
You're buying the margaritas later, okay? I've got to get ready for tomorrow's hearing. All right.
I think he's just a wonderful human being. I mean, I think it's horrible what the Democrats have done. It's a con game they're playing. They're really con artists. They're trying to convince. You know, they don't believe it themselves. Okay, they know he's a high quality person. They don't believe it. It's just resist and obstruct. They're playing a con game, and they play it very well. They play it actually much better than the Republicans.
That was the president earlier today talking about the Democrats' delay tactics on the Kavanaugh nomination in an op-ed on FoxNews.com. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, wrote, quote, "If not Judge Kavanaugh, then who?" This is the question Republicans need to ask themselves as they prepare for Thursday's Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. Joining us now is Newt Gingrich. Don't forget, by the way, his new book, Trump's America. It's available now, part 2 of which talks about all the challenges the president will face. Mr. Speaker, you look at the fact Dianne Feinstein literally had this in July. She didn't bring it up till now. Then the people that Professor Ford mentioned, all of them deny it. And then you got the New Yorker article where Ms. Ramirez admits she was inebriated very early, slurring her words, gaps in her memory, etc. And then you have the new face of the Democratic Party says, oh, I'm going to reveal gang rape in the next 48 hours. I don't know what are the American people to think, and so many Democrats rushing to judgment, no presumption of innocence.
Look, I think what the American people should think is that you have a Democratic Party so desperate to stop the Supreme Court from becoming conservative that they are prepared to lie, to smear, to be hysterical, to break Senate rules, to do whatever they have to do. What you're watching is a party totally desperate, and you've got to put this week in context. I was struck earlier today that Arthur Miller's great play, The Crucible, which is about the Salem witchcraft trials, actually relates to what's happening to Judge Kavanaugh. What he's being put through is almost like a medieval torture. Somebody shows up 35 years later. Everybody in the audience ought to think about this. Close your eyes for a second and ask, what were you doing on June 12th, 35 years ago? The truth is, you almost certainly don't know. And the fact is, this hearing is a farce. There's nothing that Kavanaugh can say which will convince Chuck Schumer to vote for him. And I think that Dr. Ford has no evidence other than her own word, which is going to count. They can't provide any witnesses. She can't even tell us, to the best of my knowledge, what was the date, where was the house, who all were there. The people she names all say they weren't there. Now, at what point is the burden of common sense on the accuser? And if it's a burden of common sense, this hearing wouldn't even be held. It's only in the current hyper environment in which Senator Naranjo can say men ought to just shut up. I mean, think about the level of venom in that sentence. You have an entire effort by the totalitarian left to bludgeon us. You saw it last night, as you reported, with Senator Cruz and his wife. I mean, what has happened to America when random left-wing totalitarians think they can violate private property, trespass in a restaurant, go in and intimidate a citizen who's simply trying to have dinner, and they think they're heroes? And apparently the police aren't called. Nobody's arrested for trespass. Nobody's arrested for intimidation. We're watching a period